Welcome back to Get Unstuck and On Target. I'm Mike O'Neill. Whether it's our team at Bench Builders working with a company or it's me coaching one-on-one, a high-performing CEO, getting people unstuck is at the heart of everything I do. And that's exactly what this podcast is all about. Each week, I get to bring you incredible guests who share their hard-won experiences of getting themselves or others unstuck, back on target, and moving forward. And I hope it gets you unstuck and on target as well. I've got a question for our listeners. Are you getting the most from your marketing budget? If you're not sure, you're going to enjoy this episode because today joining me on this podcast is Michael Wolfe. Michael is the founder of Bottom Line Analytics. He's worked for or with blue chip brands such as Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, McDonald's, Starbucks, Capital One, FedEx, and the Florida and Georgia lotteries. In addition, Michael has done work in over 35 countries throughout Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Today's topic is how to really answer that question I asked, how to analyze how effective your marketing, in fact, is. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you asking me to do this with you. It's my first time, and I'm excited about it.
Well, when I spoke to you, I'm glad you're excited. When I spoke to you, I kind of go, I personally would not describe myself as a numbers person, but you are in every sense of the word. And I felt that our listeners, and as you well know, are key leaders, they're business owners, and they probably have responsibility for a marketing budget. And in our prior conversations, I just felt that you just offer a wealth of experience that we can benefit from. How did you get into this type of work? A little bit about your background. How did you get into this type of detailed data analysis?
My educational background, I got an advanced degree in economics. There's a branch of economics called, so I just like numbers and I like the insights I can get from numbers. Basically there are two things, terrestrial things that I love. That's outside family and God. Okay. Baseball and the work that I do. Okay. I started my career in 1980. That's a long time ago with the Kellogg Company. I worked for Fisher-Price Toys. After that, I worked for a market research company in Cincinnati. I worked for Kraft Foods, the largest food company in the world at the time in Chicago. Then I came down and worked for Coca-Cola Company. Then I worked for an ad agency. So I've had very diverse across different kinds of businesses work. And I find the diversity challenging and interesting. But the most important thing is I love what I do because I'm able to get dollars and cents results for my clients. I've actually developed a process, go through the process, lots of data and analytics. I mean, analytics is just a tool, okay, to give you answers and perspective on what the data is telling you, what the business opportunities are in that. And I go from there. And the thing that from a business standpoint, what I found, you mentioned a lot of big companies, I can work with small companies as well. And I have done so.
Yes.
Some of the work I've done with small companies actually may be even more fun, if you will, because I know the impact, I know the appreciation. You're not talking to a whole bunch of, committees and things like that. So I will work in both big and small. The thing that a lot of companies don't understand, whether it's even a small company, they're swimming in data.
Mm-hmm.
And every single company, there's diamonds there. Okay. They need to be able to find it. And if making marketing more effective is a critical part of what I do. I also do things with pricing as well. how to make the best decision with pricing. We're going to talk about marketing. And I want to share a couple famous quotations. There's a gentleman named John Wanamaker. He's actually over 100 years ago. He was a businessman. He owned some retail stores in New York area. The only thing he was basically known is this quotation, but he's kind of considered the father of modern day advertising. He says, I know that half of the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The problem is I just don't know which half. Believe it or not, that's still somewhat true today. Many marketing people kind of think, well, I'm having fun creating ads, going to the agency, creating new commercials, all that stuff, without necessarily being accountable for what they're doing. What I do answers the questions that Wanamaker was asking. So I got a little bit of a joke to tell you. When I say I'm a numbers guy, right? Once time I said that I was at a dinner, this woman says, "You mean you're a numbers guy? Oh, that means you're better than a sleeping pill."
Well, I surely hope that won't apply to our conversation here. I normally would stay clear of this, but what really drew me to you and having this conversation is that I see companies, large and small. It's almost like they're throwing spaghetti at the wall when it comes to marketing. They're trying all these different things. And the thing that really attracted me to you is you mentioned those diamonds. Whereas you look at where this money is spent, how it's being spent, and through analysis, you come back and you make observations and you back it up with the data. I'm not an economist. So in practical terms, what have you found has been the most common mistake that companies make when it comes to marketing?
Not measuring it, or doing it in a token way, not totally understanding the effectiveness of what they're doing.
How do you measure marketing? What are the things that we should be thinking about when you describe measurement, please?
So let's just conceptually think about a client. Client will or through their ad agency, and I work with the ad agency a lot, collects data on all the ads that they place or buy. Okay. That's data. Then you've got the revenue or sales data. You link the two over time. So there's waves in the data. There's waves in the revenue. You're connecting the two together. You're monetizing all of the advertising and promotion that the company's doing. So if you can monetize it, and of course, you know what you spend on it, the cost, then you can determine whether you're making any money off of it or not.
Yeah.
And there are three types of marketing or advertising. There's the really good ones that actually generate more revenue, more profit than they cost you. Then there's things that they work, but they don't quite cut the grade. And then there's the things that doesn't work at all. I remember 3 years ago working for a company that's a law firm, that's a personal injury law firm.
Yep.
I won't name names. But when I first did the work for them, I found that 45% of the money they were spending, very large number, by the way, did absolutely zero. No revenue generated from that at all. No cases, in other words. So that still exists today. And by working with us, I'm going to give my Florida lottery case study here.
Okay.
And by working with us over time, the wasted spend will go away. So what really excites me is I'm a numbers guy, but what I really do is I tell stories with numbers.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the stories I've had, this is almost too good to be true, but it is true. One of my clients is the Florida Lottery. My company first engaged them in 2018. And I did this marketing effectiveness analytics. And I've done this each year. I'm on the 5th year with them now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I did this, I say, I'm able to just tell them what's working, what's not working so well, but is working a little, and what's not working at all.
Yes.
And I make recommendations, spend more on this, less on this, quit spending on that. And the amazing thing, I was working with their ad agency because I'm getting much more detail than the client ever gets, because the agency buys in the course of a year, the Florida Lottery places something like 500 different ads and promotions into the market. I monetize every one of those.
Okay.
And I say, this is what's working. This is what's not working too well. This is not working at all. This is how you should spend your money. They actually did this stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of results did they get? So in 2018, I can go back 5 years. The Florida Lottery was growing in the prior 5 years about 3% per year. From 2018 into the end of their fiscal year 2023, which it ended in June, they went from $6.2 billion. Lottery is a big business.
Yes.
To $10 billion in that amount of time. That's a 10% per year annual growth rate. So the growth doubled or tripled, actually tripled.
Yeah.
And I can ascribe about, out of that $3.8 billion increase, I can ascribe about $2.8 billion to the things that they actually did. Okay. The amazing thing was that in 2018, there's about 40 some state lotteries. Most of them are run by government employees, the states. Third largest U.S. lottery, state lottery in terms of revenue in 2018. By 2021, they were number one. So they leapfrogged over New York and California in terms of revenue, and they're still number one.
That's an impressive story. I mean, as you're describing it, I don't want to end that story, but I also want to make sure, when I think of the lottery, and that's a big organization. When I rattled off the companies you worked with, these are all blue chip type companies. Could I ask the kind of work you did for the Florida Lottery? Those are huge numbers, lots of zeros.
Yes.
Behind that. For a moment, let's shift gears and think about a small to mid-sized company. They're not spending that in their marketing efforts. To what extent does the work that you do change, or is it essentially the same for a small to mid-sized company?
Okay, let me give you a recent example. I don't think I'm going to step on any toes here because they're a unique organization. If they're a unique organization, nobody's like them. You can talk a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client that was the Harlem Globetrotters. You know who they are? The basketball team. Yes. All right. So they wanted me to do this work a little over a year ago. And so the way it works is they actually have 2 or 3 different Globetrotters teams that goes around in different cities all of the time. And so they go in like 500 different cities during course of a year.
Goodness.
Engagements. And they go in all sizes of cities, okay? Relatively small towns, mid-sized cities, large places like Chicago, LA, New York. So we did models for all of the different cities that they were in, what's working, what didn't work. And basically what we found out is they needed to spend their money in the mid-sized cities.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Basically because the audience is going to be more family.
Yep.
Okay. The big cities, it's okay. The small ones, they don't get enough people. The mid-sized cities, that's between maybe 300,000 and 800,000 population. And so when COVID hit, they almost got wiped out. Okay. For a year, they couldn't do anything.
Right.
So they're trying to, well, but they've actually recovered to their pre-COVID levels, which is saying a lot.
Yes, it is.
All right. So, they were, if you want to call it what's stuck or unstuck, they were stuck. They didn't know they were going to even survive. Okay. And now they're doing well again.
Yeah, it's a great example. COVID has impacted everybody, every business. That's a kind of a high profile business, but you're kind of sharing it from a business model standpoint by which your analysis says that you get the biggest bang for your marketing buck by targeting, quote, mid-sized cities. I did not know that there were multiple groups.
So they're a unique organization because, almost everybody's aware of the Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, my dad took me to Globetrotters when I was like 8 years old.
Yes.
In Iowa, where I'm from. Nobody knows they're going to be playing in Phillips Arena next Saturday. Okay. So they have to advertise a lot for the size of an organization they are, or simply people are not going to show up.
Right.
So they have to. And so, and they manage it well.
Let's continue that if you don't mind. Assume that I'm a business owner. I've got a marketing budget, and I really want to know if my money is being spent well. Can you give us a little bit of an insight behind kind of the curtain when you and your team kind of go to work for a client? What are those things that you're going to be asking the client for so you can do the analysis that we're describing here?
Well, usually the client has to find the data for me.
Okay.
So if I'm talking to a consumer packaged good company like Coca-Cola, there's a third-party service called Nielsen, AC Nielsen, who collects scanner data at the supermarket, and they may have other sources of, bars and restaurants and things like that. But the data resides in the company. So excuse the French, it's kind of a pain in the ass to collect the data, but you got to do it. Okay.
Right.
And then you have to make sure that the client knows that the data is good. Okay. So you have to review it with them, but then you have to work very well with the ad agency. There are two types of ad agency, the kinds that create the ads, and there's kinds that buys and places the ads. The buy and placing agency are the ones that you have to work very closely with. There's so much detail in the ads. Okay. So let me give you an example. TV ad may be the same commercial, but it may be in a 15 or 30-second or a 60-second version of it.
Right.
There's also what you call day parts. What time of day is it aired? All of those are separate entities I look at. So we may tell them to spend more on TV, but only on certain day parts.
Yes.
Prime time is very expensive. So it has to be really, really good to pay off on prime time. It's that level of detail. When they execute, the media buying agency is able to execute against that without the client having to look over their shoulders. And I fortunately got a great relationship with their agency. They believe in it. A lot of times agencies think it's a report card on them and they're not exactly, in line with it. But getting the client aligned on what you're going to do and what you're going to do, what are they going to do with what you're doing is really important.
That's helpful to know. I hesitate to go here, but I want to ask it nonetheless. You mentioned that you worked with Indri, a law firm, and we were returning from a trip recently, and I just started noticing the billboards. And it seemed to
highly
me
correlated with the number of accidents on the road.
Well,
on that road.
That would make sense. I was on an interstate, but I noticed the sheer volume, and maybe more importantly, I began kind of looking at, for every 10 billboards, what percentage of those billboards were in fact injury attorneys. And it's not very scientific, but well over half.
Of course. Okay, of course.
Clearly, billboards, at least these injury lawyers have concluded, work.
Yes,
did
they
you
do.
look at billboards?
Some of them do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them don't.
Okay.
So with the company I work with, I don't know if you're familiar with Interstate 10 that goes right to Orlando.
I am.
All right. Basically, that road is bumper to bumper all the time, 75 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has any time to look at billboards.
Yes.
The billboards along that particular road just didn't work.
Interesting.
But we also, with billboards, it's location, whether it's a urban location or along an interstate location. I mean, if you're a McDonald's, and I've done some work with McDonald's, a really effective billboard is McDonald's next exit. That's it.
Yes.
But, to go out and talk about a branding exercise, sometimes I've worked with clients, I'm still at a mystery of why something works. I just know that it does. We did a project, recently closed a project with a hospital, 12 hospital unit, healthcare company up in Philadelphia, where the most effective ad was outdoor ads. I still don't know why, but I think it's because a branding message. They had one big other hospital they competed with, and getting their brand in people's minds all the time was kind of the big thing.
You mentioned McDonald's, and I can't think of a better time. Could you share a little bit about your work with McDonald's? And I think what you shared with me, the example that you're going to give goes back far enough by which it doesn't create a problem for you to divulge the client and the results. So
in most cases, I usually sign a non-disclosure agreement with a client that has a life of 10 years, which I can't even talk to anybody about them theoretically.
Gotcha.
So McDonald's was a situation, it was 2005. They were really my first big client. So I was doing marketing effectiveness model, and like the lottery, I evaluated their advertising, the return on investment in their advertising. And it so happens they've got owner operators in McDonald's who send 10% of their profits to the headquarters in order to fund the advertising. So they're not sure that it's working for them. Okay. So I showed that it was working for them, but that was not the big issue. This is a stuck versus unstuck situation.
Right.
For the prior 3 years, McDonald's measures itself by how well they're growing relative to their dastardly competitors, Burger King, Wendy's, and maybe Pizza Hut, because they all, everybody knows their revenue and quarterly reports and stuff like that. But they lagged all of them. So that usually in consumer products, you need to evaluate something else. That's launching a new product. Okay. They launched a new product in 2005, and I evaluated there's two types of new products. Products that cannibalize all the other products that you have. Those usually end up failing. Okay. They're off the market in 2 to 3 years, which happens to be 90% of new products fail. Okay. And then there's the ones that I saw lifts all boats in the harbor. This was one of those.
Okay.
The interesting thing, they hardly spent any marketing money behind at all. And yet I could see where it got people, but it was actually lifting the sales of the entire enterprise. Okay. And I basically said, this is such a success. I says, and you're not spending nothing. You're spending virtually nothing. You need to spend 10x on this. Okay. Like a drunken sailor, you got to spend a lot on it. They actually did this. Okay. And in the next 3 years, the situation of them being less than the competitors reversed itself. Okay?
Gotcha.
So they were stuck. Okay. They were stuck in mediocrity. They weren't growing like your competitors were. And all of a sudden that changed.
You're pointing out that you found something that was working, but for it to really work, they needed to lean into it. You recommended a much bigger advertising.
It made me a little nervous. Okay. Frankly.
Why did it make you nervous?
Well, you never know. They could have spent, 10 times more and they didn't get what they thought they would get at it.
But I see.
That product was dollar value, which the concept was very different from all of their other product line. So differentiating yourself, that's differentiating the product is really important to its success. As long as you don't differentiate it and your differentiation is crazy, people don't buy into it.
The example you gave there with the dollar menu purposely is an example that goes back greater than 10 years, but now that's a very common thing that we see with pretty much all of the fast food companies.
Oh, yeah, they're doing that all the time, and most of them fail. Okay.
Yes. Interesting.
Now, there's one recently, this was not a client. I tried to get him for a client. Popeyes.
Yep.
Okay, about 3 years ago, they came out with this chicken sandwich.
Right.
It became like a phenomenon. And it was very good. I've tried it. And it drove their business for 3 years.
Yeah, it took off like wildfire. Now, you and I are in, we're speaking from Georgia, the base of Chick-fil-A. And I need to bring somebody on from Chick-fil-A because it seems like everything they do very, very well. But what I found is they were going toe-to-toe with a Chick-fil-A. Now, Chick-fil-A has done just fine. I don't know what's happened to Popeyes, but what you're saying is that one product, that one sandwich fueled sales for not months, but literally years.
Yeah, in fact, they were bought out by the company that owns Burger King.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yes.
Michael, what I really like about this is you described yourself as, yes, you are a numbers guy, but what you find really works, particularly when you're working with clients, is take these numbers and put them in the form of a story. Let the numbers kind of be the story, and to have the gift to take numbers and put it in a story that people can understand. We've gotten a little bit of a taste of that. Michael, if people want to learn more about Michael Wolfe and your company, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, if you can spell the word bottom line analytics plural.com. Okay. Or you can email me, MJW, Michael J. Wolfe, just MJW at bottomlineanalytics.com. Or just send me something over LinkedIn.
Gotcha. Matter of fact, that's how you and I first met, was via LinkedIn. And as I kind of looked into you and your background, I kind of go, this is something we've not discussed on this podcast. And I'm glad we did. I really enjoy hearing some of the backstories, things that we might not hear.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're still awake.
I'm awake, and I'm confident the folks who are listening are also awake. I also want to thank our listeners for joining us today. For even more insights about getting unstuck and moving your business forward, you can subscribe to this podcast by going to unstuck.show. While you're there, you can subscribe to our weekly management blog called The Bottom Line. So if you're a leader and you're trying to grow your business, but people problems have slowed you down, let's talk. Head over to bench-builders.com to schedule a call. So I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you have picked up on some quick wins from Michael that will help you get unstuck and on target.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this.